Hello everybody, Happy New Year and thank you for joining us and welcome to the first session of our January Health Reset event series. My name is Maria Lally and I'm the Digital Health Editor here at the Telegraph. Tonight I'm going to be talking about something that so many of us think about and talk about in January, and I think this January perhaps more than ever, and that's weight loss. But tonight we're going to be talking about really smart, healthy, sustainable weight loss. And joining me this evening is Dr Rangan Chatterjee. Dr Chatterjee is a GP, he's a best-selling author, and he hosts the most listened to health podcast in the UK and Europe, Feel Better, Live More. He's written several books, and his latest book, Feel Great, Lose Weight. He's also written best-selling books on stress. And I think that's a really big chunk of the weight loss puzzle is stress. And it is a puzzle because we all know the basics of losing weight, but for some reason, the reality is often a bit more complex than that. So I'd like to welcome Rangan, who's joining us now. Hello.
Really looking forward to seeing all these, these countries, these cities. It's just incredible. We've got people from America and all over the UK. Incredible.
It's absolutely incredible. So I was just saying, Rangan, that obviously you're a practicing GP, so you know firsthand how complex the issue of weight loss can be. And something we've spoken about before is that how you've seen it played out in your surgery time and again, that there are so many reasons why people struggle to lose weight or to keep weight off, or they can gain it and not know why. And there are lots of sort of other issues tied up in that, like stress and lifestyle and even just really ingrained behaviours around food. And you unpick a lot of those issues in your book, which we'll be talking about shortly. So January, I'm a health journalist. I've been a health journalist for years, and January is always a time when people talk about diets, whether it's a 30-day diet, a juice diet, a carb-free diet, sugar-free diet. I've heard about them all, I've seen them all. But what I'd like to know is, why don't these diets ever seem to work, and why don't they stick?
Yeah, you're right, Maria. You must have seen everything in your years as a health journalist. And at this time of year, it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it, that what new weight loss diet is going to be marketed this month, this year, compared to last year's. But most of these diets don't tend to work for most people. Now, I want to say really clearly, occasionally they can do, and they can help people reset their behavior, and they can take those learnings on. But for most of us, that simply doesn't happen. And there's two real reasons why they don't work so well. Number one, they put us on a regime of willpower. A regime of deprivation, restriction, and they overly rely on willpower. Now, those things can work in January. You can drop a dress size in 2 weeks, and that's what's on the front cover of the book. But those things rarely last beyond January because they come from a place of deprivation and restriction. And often I see those people in March in my clinic. So they lost a bit of weight in January. Then what happens is that in March, they've not only gone back to where they were, they're a bit heavier, but that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is that they feel like failures. It's the only industry where we don't blame the diet. Yeah. We blame ourselves. And that really was the impetus behind writing this book, was to say, look, people are not failures. They're not to blame. The environment, the world around us has dramatically changed. In the 1980s, that's when this started to become such a big problem. We didn't become the first generation in history to become lazy and gluttonous. That's not what happened. The world around us changed. If we brought our great-grandparents into 2021, 65% of them would also be overweight or obese, right? So the first reason is deprivation and restriction never works in the long term. But the second reason is that a lot of these diets just focus on the diets. They only focus on what you are eating. And as you alluded to at the start, that's only one small component. Why you're eating, for example, is often a much bigger area to consider. And the current times in which we're living are prime examples, Maria, because think back to last year, which was only, a week ago or so, when it was still 2020, lots of people are talking about the weight gain that they had during the pandemic in lockdown. The media had all kinds of catchy terms, didn't they? Corona Stone, the Quarantine 15. And what's really interesting is that if you look at the data and the science, it suggests that 80% of us change our eating behavior in response to stress. 45% of us eat more, 35% of us eat less. So sometimes it's not the diet that's the problem. And what I've said to you before, Maria, is that we used to eat to fill a hole in our stomachs. Now many of us are eating to fill a hole in our hearts. And that's really the key point. Some of us these days are eating our emotions. A lot of people I can see in the chat on the right, they're comfort eating.
I was just going to say, because I'd like to talk about emotional eating, actually, because in your book, you really urge people to question what it is they're really looking for when they are, when you're going, it's 9 p.m, you've had enough to eat. I do this myself. I know I've had enough to eat, but it's 9 p.m, I've had a bad day and I'm looking for a biscuit, or I'm looking for some leftover, Quality Street, or, you pour yourself a glass of wine, and you urge people, don't you, to sort of stop and question what it is you're
Yeah, it's a great question.
And
this just to sort of highlight what Lisa said there on the right, that eat less, move more. She's sick of hearing that. I get it. That's why I wrote this book, because I was sick of actually that's the only narrative that's getting out there, and there's more to it than that. And we need this kind, compassionate approach, and that comes into eating our emotions, which many of us do, Maria. So let's take that example, okay? So it's dark here in the UK at the moment. It's cold. At 9 p.m. in the evening, if you're sitting on the sofa and you have a craving for something sweet, like, let's say, I don't know, packet of crisps, let's say.
And it's always something like that, isn't it? You're not craving sliced.
You're not, and I do talk about in the book. I call these foods blissy foods. They have been created this way, a certain combination of fat, sugar, and salt. Actually, you can't resist, because it spikes something called dopamine in the brain. Now, there's all kinds of things you can do to help that. But if we take that example where you're craving in that moment, what should you do? Because let's be honest, Maria, most people who are trying to lose weight, most of them, they don't need someone to tell them that biscuits and ice cream in front of the telly in the evening are not going to be helping them. They already know that. So the question is why? So I've got this really nice exercise in the book called the freedom exercise, or the 3 Fs. And I just want to talk people through it because it's so useful. So in that moment when you have that craving,
that'd be great.
Right? In that moment, take a pause, and the first F is feel. What are you really feeling? Are you hungry for food, or are you hungry for something else? You can write it down, or just take a moment. Have you just had a row with your partner? Has the kids' bedtime gone on too long? Have you been on your laptop all day on Zoom calls and not been outside yet, and you're feeling just a little bit yucky? What is it you're really craving? Then go ahead and have the biscuits or the crisps, okay? The second F is feed. How does food feed that feeling? I was really stressed today. When I eat those crisps, my stress goes down. I feel better about myself. Okay, great. Have the crisp, but at least now you're starting to build that awareness. And then the third F is find. Now that you know how food feeds that feeling, you can find an alternative behavior that doesn't include food. So if you're stressed out, it could be you run yourself a bath. It could be that if you've not done any movement that day and you're feeling a bit yucky, you can put on YouTube and do a 5-minute yoga flow, or do a quick workout. Or you might have an association with your sofa and eating. And so maybe if you're lucky enough to have the room, you can go to a different room to start to try and break that habit. There's all kinds of things that you can do. There's so many options I talk about in the book. So everyone's going to find the right option for them. But this is going back to the original question, this is one of the reasons why it is hard for these quick fix diets to become sustainable, because most of them don't address the root cause of why we're eating.
Yeah. And do you think as well at the moment you mentioned about, your kids are in bed, and obviously lots of people on this call, and myself, and you and lots of people out there, they've got their children at home, they're working at home themselves. do you think we're using food as sort of signposts in our day? So, you know, for an example, when I finish my working day, I almost look for something to break up, you know, to break that working day into relaxation. And lots of people I know will immediately have a cup of tea and a biscuit, or a treat, or, you know, some cake, because it's all, or a glass of wine, because they feel like they need to break up their day a bit. And it's like non-hunger eating. It's just it's sort of habit. You know, we've so little to look forward to at the moment. It's
I agree. I think you've absolutely spot on, particularly if we're working at home and we, you know, go into the kitchen several times a day, and we're, you open the fridge and look in the cupboard. It's just something to break it up. And I think at the moment, you know, I think that the ideas in this book were important a year and a half ago when I decided to write it. But actually, I think they've taken on even more importance now, because life is tough at the moment. Right? There's so much going on that we're not happy about. And we don't need to beat ourselves up further and actually punish ourselves with a punishing workout regime, restrict what we can eat, or overly restrict, I should say. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing anything for our health, not at all. I'm saying you can lose weight. You can do it in a way that's enjoyable, that's fun, that's sort of compassionate, if you start small and building these easy, sustainable habits that we can all do. I'll give it one habit I love. It's in the book, but I just want to share it here. Is many people in the UK now and across the world have got workout gear at home, because in the first lockdown, all dumbbells and kettlebells sold out in the entire country. So if that's someone watching this right now, I would say to you, put one of them in your kitchen. And every time you go into your kitchen to make a cup of tea, which is a lot at the moment for most people, pick up the dumbbell and do 5 bicep curls on each arm, right? If you make 3 cups of tea a day, you'll be lifting that 30 times a day, 200 times a week, but almost 1,000 times in a month. And in the moment, it will feel like nothing. And what that will do is it will help you build up your self-esteem, your self-worth, your mental health. And that will lead to a ripple effect. And actually, if you do that, you'll find some of the time you won't want to snack later because you've expended a bit of energy. You're showing yourself each day that you're worth it and you're worth looking after. And so there's all kinds of little tips like that. Can I share one more tip?
Yeah.
No, I just want to show people how easy it can be. A lot of the time when we go on these health journeys, whether it's to lose weight or not, we never take any time to understand what's going on. We just follow the plan, right? The plan says I could do this, I can't do that. But any part of real transformation and change, you need to start understanding yourself better. You need a bit of reflection. And there's this really nice daily reflection exercise in the book where every evening you ask yourself 2 questions. What went well today?
Yeah.
And what can I learn from today and do differently tomorrow? So that could be, oh, today, you know what? Work was really tough. I didn't really get much of a lunch break, but I still made 20 minutes to cook me and my children a home-cooked meal. And so you're really just acknowledging that, life's tough, but I did that. And then the second one might be, what didn't go so well and what can I change for tomorrow? You know what? I was tired today. I was so stressed last night. I was watching Netflix till midnight and I didn't sleep well. I've been craving sugar all day. I've been a bit ratty with my family and my children. Tonight, you know what? I'm not going to stay till midnight watching Netflix. Maybe I'll cut it off at 10:30 so that I'm a bit fresher tomorrow. And if you do that every day, it takes minutes. And you start to build up a really positive picture of yourself. It's full of compassion and kindness. And I promise you, this is the way to make it last in the long term, beyond January.
Yeah, that sounds great. Someone called Sue has just said that she does, or I don't know if she does it or she suggests doing it, is Pilates in the kitchen as well. Just doing
again, anything that you like. I mean,
you have a
my whole approach is a personalized approach. So choose the things that you like from what you're hearing tonight, or if you do get the book from what's in the book, choose what you like and build that in, but be kind to yourself.
And I'd also like to talk about, I mean, you've just touched on it there, but stress and sleep. So in 2020, you know, it was a really tough and relentless year. And we know from countless studies that stress levels and sleep were really impacted. And we know, don't we, that stress and sleep, they can hinder our weight loss efforts on quite a sort of, you know, cellular level. They can
they
really
absolutely
make it
can,
hard
and
to
these
lose
are the
weight.
factors that often don't get addressed, which is why people feel so frustrated that they can't lose weight, and they beat themselves up when they're not looked at stress and they're not looked at sleep. So let's deal with sleep first, okay? So when it comes to sleep, right? When it comes back to sleep, we know from the study that if you sleep about 5.5 hours a night compared to 8 hours a night, on average, you will eat. Does this sound okay? I'm getting a small echo. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah.
After a full night's sleep, you eat on average 22% more calories the following day.
Oh, someone's just saying actually the sound is quite, there's lots of echo. I'm not sure if, oh, hang on.
I tell you what,
someone's saying there's lots of echo on the line.
Shall I put some headphones in and see if that helps? I'm so sorry about this, guys.
That helps. Oh,
someone's saying that we need to mute when we're not
okay,
speaking. And now it's gone back again, apparently. That's do you know how to mute, Maria? Maybe we should have both mutes when we're not speaking.
Great. So I'll mute now. So I've asked you the question about sort of stress and sleep. So I'll mute myself and see if that helps.
Right. Well, I was mentioning about sleep. Okay. So if we only sleep 5.5 hours a night compared to 8 hours a night, right? We eat on average 22% more calories the following day. 22%. So 5 days of not sleeping means that you'll eat an extra day's worth of calories just from not sleeping. And the reason is that sleep deprivation changes your hormones, two big hormones called leptin and ghrelin, hunger hormone and the fullness hormone. So the night after you haven't slept, you never feel full and you always feel hungry. Okay, that's the first thing to say. The other thing that happens when you haven't slept well is that you are less able to resist temptation. So anything you want to do, anything you want to improve gets harder. And I've got many patients like this, but a 44-year-old lady who was trying to lose weight for years. Every January she'd go on a new diet. Anything that was in vogue, she'd try that. She'd lose a bit of weight. She'd yo-yo back. She'd get really, really frustrated. And I helped her lose 2 stone over a number of months, which now is over 3 years ago, and she's maintained that and lost a little bit more. I didn't address what she ate. I just helped her sleep better with some simple lifestyle tweaks that she did consistently. So the point we're trying to make here is that instead of going all in one area, like on our diet, it's like, yeah, sure. I'm not saying diet doesn't play a role. And there's plenty I've written about what the principles of healthy eating are. But at the same time, let's not neglect sleep and let's not neglect stress. Right? So stress, we've already touched on a bit, but stress can come in a whole number of different forms. Over exercise can be a stress sometimes. And I know it's not something that everyone's necessarily concerned about, but many people who are trying to lose weight, right? Many people punish themselves on a treadmill. They look as though, I've seen patients like this, they've come in, they're diligently trying their best, pushing themselves hard. But if you're doing too much exercise in the context of your lifestyle, it could be a stressor. And what happens is that the stress hormone cortisol goes up. If that is up for too long and for too prolonged a period, your body thinks it's under attack, right? And because your body thinks it's under attack, it will hold on to weight and it's harder to let it go. So I've got a lot of patients, and I must say, particularly some of my female patients, actually, I need to say, hey, ease off on the exercise and actually do some yoga, do some more relaxing exercise that will help bring your cortisol levels down, help switch your mind off, help you sleep better. And often they work out less and they start losing more weight. So it's a combination. And what I try to do in the book is I help people find the right approach for them, because there's no one size fits all, unfortunately, Maria. It's about finding the right approach for us.
That's really interesting. I've just turned my microphone back on. I hope it's not too echoey. But lots of people are commenting saying, how interesting that is, that actually, you should prioritize sleep perhaps over exercise. If you're struggling to lose weight and you're waking up early or you're exercising late at night, actually perhaps, like you say, just trying to incorporate some stress, some ways to relieve stress can help hugely. And another question that keeps sort of popping up time again is, why doesn't the old-fashioned take on weight loss work? So, telling people to eat less, why doesn't that work?
First of all, yeah, at its core level, if we are gaining too much weight and we're trying to lose it, eating less, if we could do that consistently, is likely to help. That is true, but the question is, it's not that easy to do. And there's a number of reasons why that is. A lot of the foods we're now consuming actually play havoc with your hormones. So actually you don't get the natural hunger and natural, what we call satiety signals from that. So that's one of the main reasons. If you're always fighting hunger, you're going to struggle in the long term. Now, this is what I mean. You can manage in January for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks. You can white knuckle it. You can keep the motivation high. No, I'm not going to eat it. I'm not going to eat it. But ultimately, you will crack. You can't fight hunger. Yeah, it's inevitable. And actually, when we start to focus on what I call a real food diet, and what does that mean? Minimally processed foods, as close to their natural form as possible, foods that tend to be instantly recognizable, fish that looks like fish, vegetables that look like vegetables, fruit that look like fruits, or what I call in the book one ingredient foods. It's very hard to overeat them, right? You don't form cravings for them. You can't really binge eat on them. You can only really do that on your crisps, on your biscuits, on your highly processed food. So that's one reason why it doesn't work. And the beautiful thing is, if you focus on these whole foods, which doesn't need to be expensive either, 3 things happen. First of all, you feel less hungry. Second thing that happens is that your body will start to try and manage your weight for you. It's something that's called the set point in the literature. I call it the weight point in my book to really help people understand that your body has a thermostat that it thinks is your ideal weight. And actually what we want to do is send your body the right signals through your lifestyle that lowers that thermostat down, so it will automatically manage your weight for you. And the third benefit of eating these one ingredient foods is that you crave less of these blissy foods. So that's the thing regarding eating less. But the other thing we commonly say is to move more. Now, I'm not against movement at all, quite the contrary. But the question is, can you lose weight without moving at all? Yeah, you can. Would I recommend it? Absolutely not. But I don't recommend movement to burn off calories, because there's some really good research in the last few years from Herman Ponce, and he studied the Hadza tribe in Tanzania. Now, they're a hunter-gatherer tribe. They move a lot more than the average sedentary Westerner does. But what's interesting is that they burn about 2,000 calories a day. We burn about 2,000 calories per day. So these guys are moving a lot more than us, but they're not burning off more than us. And that's because our bodies are complex systems. We think that any movement we do, let's say we go on a run and our watch says that's 400 calories. We think that is additive onto the number of calories we burnt that day, but it isn't always the case. Our bodies can compensate, and it can reduce calorie expenditure from somewhere else. So I say, I don't want you to move to burn off more calories. I want people to move each day to make themselves feel good, to build up their self-esteem, to build up their self-worth. And for many people, the truth is, Maria, is that weight loss, long-term weight loss, isn't a food and movement issue. It's often a self-esteem issue. It's often an issue about how do we feel about ourselves. And when we make these small changes in our lifestyle, we start to build up how we feel about ourselves.
And how important we think we are to actually take care of ourselves.
And there's this, there's a section in the book which you wrote about in the interview you did with me, Maria, actually. But I can't tell you how many messages I've had on Instagram about this. You might remember that bit where I say obesity can be a symptom. And there's really good research now from, well, it's over 10 years old now. It's called the Asus Study, ACES. And ACES stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And we know for people who've had adverse childhood experiences, they have a very high risk of being obese and overweight later in life. And I share that story of my patient who was trying to lose weight. She was really struggling. And when I started to unpick her story, it turned out that when she was 16, she was in an abusive relationship. And actually, I could tell there was some really deep-seated emotions there. I sent her to a therapist, right? And in the therapy sessions, they uncovered that actually what she had decided was she didn't want to be in an abusive relationship ever again. And her way of staying safe was to put on weight, because if she put on weight, in her mind, she would no longer be attracted to men, so she would no longer run the risk of being in that kind of relationship. And as we started to unpick that, she got therapy. A few years on, she's lost her weight, she's happy, she's built up her self-esteem. And Maria, since the book has come out, I've had so many messages from people saying, thank you for writing this section. I now understand what happened. Someone sent a message yesterday saying they were abused when they were 16, and now they realize what's happened with such clarity, and they're going to get help now. And the reason I share that, Maria, there will be somebody on this live call right now who this applies to, because we look at the numbers. And so if just one person takes that and goes, you know what, there's more to this than just eating less and moving more, then it's worth bringing that up.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like you say, it's such a complex issue for so many different reasons. I mean, the childhood, you know, you mentioned childhood, and our behaviours around food can really stem back to our childhood. I mean, obviously that's the example you gave was, you know, really powerful and really extreme. But it can also be people who have always turned to comfort, you know, perhaps if they, I don't know, like if in childhood, if you, even if, as simple as if you fell over and hurt yourself and, you know, your parents gave you sweets, and I'm sure I probably do that with my children from time to time, but it just shows how, you know, how our behaviours around food can,
they can, and I just want to highlight that, look, a lot of these things can be changed and can be reversed and re-engineered, right? So we've all picked up behaviours from our parents and from our childhood experiences. But the point is that if you don't take a bit of time to understand where it's come from, you're going to be on this endless cycle each year of trying to lose weight, getting a little bit forward, then going 3 steps back and getting more frustrated. And it sounds complex, but it really isn't. I mean, what I always try to do is simplify these things right down and go, look, this may be an issue for you. It may not be, but if it is, here are some simple exercises that you can do. So, you know, there's no one size fits all, but I am so passionate, Maria, that you can always help somebody lose weight in a sustainable way, in an enjoyable way, in one that works for them, once you find the right approach for them.
Yeah, I've just actually, someone's just commented, and they said they're a bereavement counsellor and they see a lot of eating disorders associated with grief as well. Someone else has commented, just changing the subject slightly, when you were talking about movement, and they said getting outside in nature is the best thing for them. And that obviously ticks a lot of boxes, doesn't it? It's exercise, it's headspace, it's greenery. You know, is that something that you, even, you know, it's dark outside, but we should still be getting out in nature at the moment, right?
It is so important that even 10-15 minutes a day outside, moving in nature, is so beneficial, because as you say, Maria, it ticks several different boxes, right? We mentioned sleep already, okay? But what is one of the most important ingredients for sleep? Everyone focuses on the evening, and that's important. But a good night's sleep starts the minute that you wake up. If you get natural light exposure in the morning or even at lunchtime, you help your body set what we call your circadian rhythm. That is so important for you to sleep at night. And in the UK at the moment, it's dark. People don't want to go outside, but simply getting outside 20 minutes on a dark, overcast day, you'll probably get 20 to 30 times the amount of light into your eyes and what's called your melanopsin receptors than you will if you're inside looking at a screen, and that really will help you sleep. Nature also has the added value that it lowers levels of the stress hormone cortisol. And we've already mentioned cortisol and weight gain. We mentioned stress eating. And so if you, what was that, sorry?
And sleep. And sleep. So it's coming at it from lots of different angles.
No, please, Maria.
Sorry. So just a simple walk, like a 20-minute walk around, your local area at lunchtime, it can, reduce your stress levels. It can help your sleep. It can, there's so many things it ticks off, and it's an easy thing to do that most people
and it
can
sounds like a
spare 20
cliche,
minutes at
right?
lunchtime.
Oh, you've got a new book out, you're telling people to walk. It's like, I get it. It sounds so obvious, but I'm not asking people to walk to burn off calories. I'm asking people to walk each day because it's fundamental to who we are as humans, right? It's quite a unique movement that we have as humans. It's one of the movements that makes us human, but it signals to your body that you're a thriving human who's engaging with life. Nobody has ever felt worse after a walk, right? And I think in these current times, which are quite anxiety inducing for so many people, it helps you burn off a bit of stress as well.
It really does. It's like a micro pleasure. If you've had a really tough day at home, you just think, get out of the house, just go for a walk, and it really does lift your spirits.
Can I just mention, there's a guy, Michael Rose has just said, does moving in nature include moving outside in a city centre? Michael, it's a great question. I would say yes. The key is, of course, we'd love to be in beautiful countryside, but we've got to do what's practical and what we have access to. Even if you go outside in a city center and stare at a tree, right? When a human eye looks at what we call fractals are these shapes that you only get in nature, right? If you look at a tree, you start to lower levels of the stress hormone cortisol. So stare at a tree if you want, but it still makes a difference.
And cities and towns can be lovely in the architecture. It doesn't, I guess, if you don't have green space, you can make the best of what your surroundings are like.
It's not that tricky for many of us to access that. And can I just, another point we've not mentioned, Maria, which I think is really important, is that we very much have this all or nothing mindset around our health, particularly in January. I mean,
actually, some said that perfectionism is a terrible thing. I noticed one of the readers
it really
said
is actually, and I'm someone who's really suffered with that in the past, and I'm actually I would say I'm a perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist, I should say. I used to be I'm all in or I'm all out, and actually that's great when you're all in, but it's not so great when things aren't going well. And the approach I really encourage people to take is, if you are a perfectionist, and if you are either all in or all out, or if you have a packet of biscuits one night, you go, screw it, this plan's not working, I'm going back to the way I was. There's a few exercises in the book that will help you understand where that comes from, because actually that often comes from self-worth and how we feel about ourselves, and a deep desire to, I don't really like saying this, but almost punishing ourselves because we don't feel enough. And a much kinder approach, and that's why that 3F exercise is so useful. The daily reflection is so useful. You realize that, you know what? Last night, I had a big pack of biscuits in front of the sofa because, you know what? I was really stressed. I didn't like the Boris Johnson announcement. Suddenly I knew I had to homeschool the kids. If that's you, that's fine. But if you understand why, then tonight when you get that same craving, you can go, you know what? When I had those biscuits, I felt a bit yucky afterwards. I didn't sleep that well. I'm kind of feeling like that tonight. Actually, today I'm going to try something different today. I'm going to try a different approach. I'm going to run a bath. I'm going to have a workout. And so I think that's a missing part of a lot of health plans, is this self-awareness, trying to understand ourselves, which frankly sounds intimidating, but it really isn't. And it's so rewarding. It really is.
Yeah, someone's just said here, I feel like I sabotage myself, binge eating to almost harm myself when I'm stressed. I feel so self-destructive. And I think a lot of people will relate to that.
It is more common than is commonly spoken about. And the reason I know this is because over 20 years of helping patients, I've always been fascinated by who is able to make the changes, who can make them sustainable. And as I've always said, my patients have taught me more than I've taught them, because I really listen, and you can see this pattern over and over again, that there is a lot of there's a lot of self-worth tied up. There's also a lot of fat shaming in society. So frankly, if someone has got a tendency to put on weight, they often get demonized and discriminated against in society, which actually feeds that shame cycle, that binge eating, that wanting to harm ourselves, often through binging on food. And so, you know, I'm not trying to say that there are simple answers to all of these things, but just being aware of this and starting to unpick it. Yes, the exercises I outlined, but if you need a bit more professional help, that's okay. But I don't want people to keep beating themselves up each year, going, why has my friend managed to lose weight and I can't? We're all wired differently. You know, I can binge on sugar sometimes, and I did in the second lockdown. And it's not, Maria, that I don't know that it's not helping me. You know, this is my 4th book, right? I've written about sugar many times, but it's not my rational brain that's driving that. It's my emotional brain. And so, but I won't put on weight when I do that. But what I will do is I'll feel it in my teeth. I'll be moody. I won't sleep well. So it still impacts me. So yeah, there's all kinds of things. There's loads of questions on the right kind of diet, of course, as usual. I'm not sure we'll have time, but we can always try if you want, Maria.
So why don't we, I'll go to a couple of reader questions. So one of them is, why do some people never put on weight? They always stay slim no matter how much they eat or how old they get. What is their biological secret?
It's a great question. I'm sensing a bit of frustration in whoever asked that question. The truth is, some of us are genetically wired to not put on weight, even if we engage in you know, so-called unhealthy behaviors. And it may seem unfair, but actually, just because you haven't put on weight, it doesn't mean you're healthy. And there's a big misconception out there. You can absolutely be unhealthy and have real problems with what we call visceral fat, so thin on the outside and fat on the inside. But genes play a role, your upbringing, your microbiome plays a role. That's the collection of gut bugs inside you. These all things play a role. So yeah, I know we'll keep them short and succinct in the interest of time, but it can be genetic, that I'm afraid.
So the next question, and this has come up quite a few times as well, is about the menopause.
Yeah, this is really common. Many women suffer with this, and they maybe have never had a weight issue before, and sometimes it kicks in after the menopause. Now, there's quite a few different reasons why that could be. Stress still plays a big role there, I promise you, because not only does stress exacerbate menopausal symptoms, because it really does, but also sometimes going to see your doctor and actually getting a treatment for the menopause can actually help a little bit with that weight gain as well. So it can be more challenging, but it's not impossible. It really isn't. And again, it's about trying to, Ruth has put menopause exacerbates stress. I agree. I'm not a woman, right? So I'm not going to try and pretend to know it from that perspective. But from what I've heard from my patients, I've seen that over and over again. But
I think it impacts on sleep. So
it does.
You know,
but,
you have that cycle again.
I showcased this on the first season of Doctor in the House on BBC One a few years ago. If anyone saw that, and it is available on YouTube, so if the people search for it, there was a lady who was really struggling with this exact problem: menopausal weight gain, problem with sleep, hot flushes, and she didn't want hormones. Her GP had offered them to her, and she was scoring 15 out of 17 on the British Menopausal Society Symptom Questionnaire. And in 6 weeks, I helped her get that down to 2 out of 17. So it barely bothered her, and she started losing weight. And the way I did that was the same approach I had outlined, which is these small things. She had to do a lot of relaxation work, a lot of stress management work, but not that tricky. It sounds complex, but the point I'm trying to make is that, and some people, frankly, if their doctor benefits, if their doctor thinks that HRT would be of benefit for them, and it's beyond the scope of this talk for me to talk about that, because there are risks and benefits to discuss with your own healthcare professional, but sometimes that can absolutely help as well. So what I don't want people to do is feel helpless, that there's nothing that they can do. There's plenty that we can do. There's plenty, and a lot of people have asked, you know, they try to eat healthily, they regularly strength train, but they still can't lose weight. And I just want to say, there are so many things that you might want to experiment with. In the book, I call this what we eat, why we eat, when we eat, how we eat, and where we eat. And often we haven't considered all of them. So for example, if someone's eating well and strength training, maybe adjusting when they eat, eating more in harmony with their body's natural circadian rhythms. That can absolutely have a big difference for some people. So there's always a way to unlock the puzzle, but it's not as simple as eat less and move more for most people.
Yeah. And then another question is, someone wanted to talk about, I mean, we're running out of time slightly, but we had quite a few questions about fats.
In terms of in your diet?
Yeah, and how, you know, what role they can play in weight loss.
What's good about them is they can help you feel full for longer. I mean, protein is what we call the macronutrient that keeps you full for the longest. Okay, so there's a bit in the book called Power Up with Protein, and just shows how, you know, often people feel hungry 2 hours after a meal, they're craving food. And actually, there's a couple of reasons why that might be. Number one, sometimes people don't eat enough. Right? So sometimes when people are trying to lose weight, they really restrict what they eat. 2 hours later, they're starving. So sometimes people actually need to eat more at their main meal of this kind of whole food approach. And actually, sometimes eating more helps with the weight loss, which is counterintuitive because they snack less. But sometimes you need to increase your protein intake. That can help keep you full for longer. I'm a big fan of healthy natural fats like, you know, avocados and olives and nuts. You've got to be careful. Things like nuts can be very easy to overeat. They are very calorie dense, and some people start to gorge on them, and that can become problematic. Nut butter is another thing that people tend to gorge on, myself included. So just be really careful with that. But around diets, few people have asked about keto, low carb, plant-based. I do cover all of this because the reality is that as a doctor, I'm not going to put myself in one camp. It's not my job to. I've got patients who low carb works brilliantly for, but I've got other patients who are on a high carb, whole food, vegan diet who are also thriving. And so it's about fine tuning what you're doing. Having whole food is the basis, but then I go through how you can experiment to work out what is the right approach for you. Just because your best friend went keto and it changed their life, great for them. It doesn't mean that's the right approach for you. It might be, but it might not be also. And that's the subtlety we often miss.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, do you know what? We're just about out of time now, but I think that was a really good answer to end on, because obviously what you say is that we are all so different and there isn't one approach that fits all. And, you know, bringing us back to our first question, that's probably why typical January diets don't work, because it's, you know, we need an approach that works for us. And I think that's what your book does brilliantly. It sort of unpicks all those issues around, you know, our behavior and how we eat. And so first of all, I'd really like to thank everyone at home for watching, and thank you, Rangan, so much for joining us and answering all those questions. We tried to get through as many as we could. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined us, and have a lovely rest of your evening and a happy new year.
See you later, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Good January.